So the lie began from the very beginning of time, right? And I can ask you one question right now. What does history tell us you about Africa? Who discovered Africa? If you write right now on Google who discovered Africa, you find out that is one white man that he came and discovered Africa. And you can ask yourself that how can you discover a place that already exists? How can you discover a place that people already live in that place? It is impossible, but that's what the history tells us. That's what people believe about Africa, that it was discovered by a white man. This guy, he came, and then he went back, he gave a report, and then the next we know is colonialism, because those guys, they sat somewhere to divide Africa like a piece of cake, because they discovered it, they own it, it belonged to them. But that is us. We discovered, we're the first people to know. And today you have a lot of people around the world that they think that Africa was discovered by them.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to the stream. It's your host, Mwende Tezi. Welcome to Swahili Nation. Today is a beautiful Sunday. A little bit warm on the east coast of Africa. Welcome, Al Kebilan. Africa was discovered by its people. Was Africa? Africa, I don't even think was. I don't know. Africa always existed. They were. I don't think. I think. Africa is the home of everything, right? Africa is the motherland. Today we're talking about elections, the cruel harvest of the Kenyan emotional life. Basically, the emotional toll that elections take on Africans, really. But today we're specifically just going to talk about Kenyans, because Kenyans just had an election, and guys are kind of emotionally drained, depending on what, doesn't matter which side you are. There's a lot of vile and just a lot of draining of exhaustion. Everybody's just exhausted. So yeah, let's check out this article from Professor Wandia Njoya. I quote her a lot here, and she also quotes Frantz Fanon at some point. But she wrote something very interesting. This is in her. Let me give you guys the link to her website. She's a public intellectual and proper. There we go. So yeah, let's start. The last few months, even the last 5 years, have been a journey of abuse of the political class. President Uhuru Kenyatta especially kicked tantrums when he did not get his way, undermined by the constitution using armed forces. Oh yeah, just talking about the election process in Kenya. The president of Kenya, what he did is that he tried to undermine the constitution of Kenya using all sorts of ways, like trying to gag the media, trying to use armed forces to unleash toxicity into the public conversations. you know, through the media and public relations, all these things, tactics just to divide Kenyans. And so it's been, as she says, and I think we talked about the philosophy of Africa. She claims that it's been a 5-year war for the Kenyan soul. So this is something that's been a debate all over Africa, really. The soul of Africa. I see this also in maybe Uganda. I've seen talking about the soul of even Ethiopia. I've heard guys talk about the soul of Ethiopia, and this type of conversations. So, but now what happened in Kenya is that they have courageously stopped the insidious policies like Huduma number and BBI. These are attempts for the president of Kenya to change the constitution, and I think it was stopped by the guys went to court and stopped it. Even the other day I was talking to my friend. We were having a conversation here just the other day with my friend here from Dar es Salaam, and my friend Joab from Dar es Salaam, and we were talking about how Kenyans, even the guys of the politicians in Kenya, they still go to the courts when they still go to the courts when they have problems with the elections, or when they lose an election, they still have to go to court. So that's like it's not normal. It's not normal globally, really. It's not an ordinary thing, but because of Kenyan, she claims, and they enjoy that because Kenyans have been fighting back and courageously, we have at least some independence when it comes to jurisprudence, which means the court's verdict, landmarks in jurisprudence. Yeah? Amidst all these victories, both President Uhuru Kenyatta and the civil service bureaucrats have struggled to hide their irritations that Kenyans have used the constitution to demand proper governance. It is this energy and consciousness, rooted in proud history of resistance, that make Kenya what it is and make the West fight to control the Kenyan ship. Since 1895, Africans on this side of the continent have given Europe nothing but embarrassment. For the longest time, the British could not venture near areas where there are Maasai, Pokot, Turkana, Samburu. These are basically Nilots, but okay. Because the people there would starve the British colonial officers of food and would viciously fight. In Giriama land at the coast, the British were outsmarted by the famous Mekatili Wamenza in Ukombani and the Central Rift and Kisii land, all the way to Western. Several groups militarily and theologically undermined the colonial project. True. Now she has been very curious, very careful not to mention two specific tribes, probably because of the general election. The 1952 Mau Mau, oh, okay, no, here it is. 1952 Mau Mau resistance has made proud history. Everybody knows about the Mau Mau of Kenya, internationally known and a major embarrassment to the empire because it made it clear that Africans are not a walkover, as the racist empire said they were. This is a whole arsenal of political energy that made the West afraid. The Swinnertonian Plan of 1952, the British crafted a Kikuyu-centric African bourgeoisie. This is the mediocre middle class, whose job is to contain not just the Mau Mau, but the further Kenyan resistance. And in this agenda, it was quite effective due to the use of the civil service, the largest in the region, which had initially been set up to maintain Kenya as a settler colony for the British aristocrats. And so in 1963 began the agony of independence without freedom. The British left behind Kenyan bureaucracy that is the most conservative and empire worshipping in the region, if not the continent, and that maintains an economic logic focused on Western principles rather than African aspirations. It took 50 years for Kenyans to significantly tame the monster with a constitution in which they declared the people sovereign. And over the last 10 years, the Kenyan people have been putting that constitution to work. That kind of political energy is enough to make empire nervous. A country like Kenya could give us ideas that other African continents in the diaspora, like the Mau Mau did in the 50s when they inspired Umkhonto, and Sizwe in South Africa, Malcolm X in the US, Rastafarians in the Caribbean, and so over the last 50 years, Kenyans have been suffocated by government bureaucracy and donor money. The influence of the bureaucratic state, politicians and donors is so pervasive that that where 2 or 3 Kenyans gather to act politically or creatively, a Kenyan politician and a civil servant or a Western donor will come between them. So this one is just, it's a very interesting perspective that whenever 2 or 3 Kenyans gather, let's just put that as Africans, whenever 2 or 3 Africans gather, a politician, a civil servant, or a Western donor will probably try to come between them. That's a very interesting point. I think she is referring to the system, that the colonial system that the British left behind, especially in Kenya, where, yes, we are independent, but we are not. In fact, she just said it there, independence without freedom. So from sports to unions to arts to political parties to tech hubs, it has been difficult for the collective endeavors to succeed before being undermined by careerism, bureaucracy, PR, and many times violence. We can't breathe, but to keep up our hopes, we are fed with media propaganda, achievements of Kenyans abroad, in order to block questions why those achievements cannot happen here at the source of that inspiration. So yeah, she just gives you a perspective of the colonial system in Africa, where yes, they left, but the people, the mediocre middle class that were left behind. In this case, she claims that it's the Kikuyu mediocre middle class that were left behind. That they continued this system. They pushed this system where where basically she spoke that Kenyans cannot speak, where it just infiltrates all societies, that even 2 or 3 Kenyans cannot speak like openly, or they cannot be objective in their conversation without somebody without a politician telling you to speak, say something, to interfere, or some Western donor, Western influence basically, trying to push maybe their own narratives. So it talks about the failing state of even sports in Kenya, the failing states of all this entertainment in Kenya, the failing state of, and this is not just Kenya. I think it's just generally all of Africa. In fact, if you look at the music industry, I think Nigeria has a huge thriving music industry, but that music industry is not thriving in Nigeria, right? It's thriving outside Nigeria. Like you see, I always see Nigerian artists, like they have great artists conquering the globe, but like they're in like the US, those are the big, those are the trending, like, oh my God, they have made it when they're in the US, and they're recognized in the US, they're recognized in the in the UK, the O2 Stadium, or is it the O2, the arena, the O2 Arena, all these arenas that they're filling all over the world. That's when people start saying, okay, now they've made it. They've made it. But when they do it in Africa, the state of art in Africa is just deplorable, that it's not even looked at as they have made it. And they say it themselves, even, and you have to wonder, why is this so? Why is this so? Why is there governments? Even Burna Boy himself has come out and said that the governments of Nigeria is not really effective in supporting artists. And even in Kenya, we hear all these things saying even the government, all over Africa, this is the same story all artists say all over Africa. Their governments really just get in the way of artistic creation, get in the way of a lot of things. And I think Wendy Enjoy here, Professor Wendy Enjoy, she is alluding to this. She's talking about how that these origins are not the origin of this oppressive system, where where you have maybe even a political opinion, the instinct is to don't let's not ruffle the waters. Let's not create waves. You know, this instinct, where does it come from? She speaks to it, and she speaks to its colonial origins. That this is a system that was left behind by the British. So yeah, let's continue this interesting story that our mother, I don't know, is it appropriate to call elder women mother or just elder? Just call her elder. In a summary, in the eyes of the empire, the greatest resource of Kenya is the people and their energy. And those need to be harvested to keep the parasitic imperial machine going. So it's a very interesting perspective, you see. So the suppression of the art, the suppression of, and she speaks about this even when you see the closing of these artistic courses in universities. Like, let's just continue, because she talks about this, and I've always spoken, like, when people say, "Oh my God, don't do philosophy; it's not going to pay money." So universities actually close philosophy departments. Like, that's a huge loss for for your country if the university wants to close the philosophy department. Like, so who's going to philosophize? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And sometimes I feel jealous, because the other day I was watching the Russian president Putin, right? He was quoting Russian philosophers, like quoting Russian philosopher, this guy, and even the other day, the daughter of like some Russian philosopher or something, although they say that might be not, that might be an exaggeration. But you find that these are the people in Africa, these are people who are looked down upon. And it's not just a mistake, it's by design. Like guys like philosophers, guys like artists, linguistics, people who do linguistics, people who do philosophy, who else? These arts, okay, anthropology, they are looked down upon, like as if that they're, because their causes probably, maybe like their causes are meant to do employment. But if you look at, there's this South African, is it South African professor? I've forgotten his name, but I might go and research him. But even you guys, you can just go and research him. He says that the biggest mistake is for people to go to university thinking that they're going to take the course that will make them money. You're going to university to gain knowledge. That's just biggest. Let's know, like, that's like the work of a university. I think capitalism has done us dirty, and turned a university from its ancient roles, into a money-making machine. Which at the ancient role of an university, even you can look at the oldest universities, I think they are found in Africa, right? So that's where the origin of knowledge is. Like, their role was not to make money. Their role was knowledge. So when you go to university, think about why you going to university. The same reason, it should be the same reason our ancestors went to their universities, in Mali, in the kingdom of Mali. Why will they go to those universities? Why will, same reason, it should be the same reason today too. But those are my opinions. Let's look at the professor's opinions. So she says, enter elections. The function of election in Kenya is to impose 5-year interruptions on Kenyan political energy, history, and memory, and channel that energy into resetting a decadent political bureaucratic establishment. As is often said by many academics, the political elite use elections to reset and realign the political alliances between each other. What is often not highlighted is that this process constitutes the extraction of political energy, which in turn leaves Kenyans emotionally. Let's replace Kenyans with Africans. Of course, she's speaking from her local perspective, but this thing is probably widespread. African, which leaves Africans emotionally and intellectually drained. Okay. And by the time Africans rebuild their energy and emotions, it is also time for the next elections and the abusive cycle starts again. The emotional and intellectual labor, which is harvested by politicians and empire, is not immediately visible for several reasons. For one, the racist narrative that Africans have no brains and that they are simply bodies for exploitation is an enduring legacy that we see from racist education policies to anti-black policy to anti-black police violence. I think I've heard, it's that's a very interesting perspective. When even when you see people even in here, Africa here, even in Pan-African circles, when you see people talk about Africans, you tend to be like, okay, there is this perspective that the solution should come from above, going down, right? Like top down, like that's where the solution should come from. And I think this perspective is always wrong. I think when you look for solutions for African problems, I think the solution should come from Africans themselves. That we should be, in fact, listening to what Africans think the solution is. And it's not that difficult. It's just going around and just asking, I do that a lot, by the way. I just ask random people, like not just random people, like people I'm like maybe I'm in somewhere and I'm talking to somebody or I'm sitting on a bus or something. I just ask a random, just curious to see what guys think, and you'll find that Africans are very knowledgeable about their issues. I think even Frantz Fanon, for guys who know this public intellectuals, I think he died in the 60s, but he wrote like a couple of books, and I've read his book called The Wretched Earth. He talks about how the masses, although the narrative is that the masses are ignorant and they don't know the issues, but they tend to be very well informed politically about the issues of the country. They can break it down very well. In fact, and they can give you the most creative solutions. That's what I think. And one of the reasons why I actually talked about the last time here, we talked about how there is a suppression of talking. That a lot of African countries, you find that this on the community level, they are rarely meetings. They are very rare. In fact, the Constitution of Kenya, actually, the guys who wrote the new Constitution of Kenya, 2010. I don't know who the guys who wrote that Constitution were pro-African so bad that they actually said that whatever a lot of the policies that a government makes, there has to be public participation, meaning that, and that public participation has to be on the community level. So this is something African politicians have yet to grapple with. They do not like Africans speaking politics, especially that's speaking politics on the community level. That is a huge taboo in Africa. Like, if you like, as you can see, African strongmen, they tend to highly discourage that. Give you their feeling that if you speak negatively, maybe against the government, something bad may happen to you. And even the outgoing mediocre president will no, oh my god, the outgoing mediocre president Uhuru Kenyatta in Kenya, probably one of the worst presidents we've ever had. if not maybe second worst, but probably worst. There he's competing with probably President Moi, but as you can see even in this article, he was using bureaucracy, PR, and even violence and propaganda, trying to stop the talking of Africans. This is the African politician trying to stop the talking of Africans, and they do this maybe by pushing tribalism. Just when that's why when you see tribalism, like, you have to look at it from the higher level. Like, why is tribalism a thing? It's because politicians are trying to stop Africans from talking. So it's like, okay, how do I stop these guys from talking? One of the ways we can do this, and this is a colonial tactic. This isn't even that our politicians are not that creative. They don't have that level of creativity. This is a colonial tactic, trying to stop. This comes from far, trying to stop uprisings in the colonies. So they push tribal narratives so that the tribes don't unite and against the empire, and against the colonial masters. So they push tribal. They say that this tribe is better than this tribe. So and that tactic has been adopted by our political class in Africa, just trying to same with the same motivation, trying to stop Africans from uprising from the mediocre politicians. You know, and sometimes this thing has to be said. You know, I think we should not suppress, like when you see it, you should just call it out. This last 1 week, the Kenyan election was, how long has it been? It's been since August, since, is it 9th? Since the 9th of August. Now we are in, oh yeah, it's been 18 weeks, almost. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been 2 weeks to me. I think it's been 2 weeks. But yeah, it's been a while. But I think we're going our third week since the election of Kenya, and a lot of people, there's been a lot of toxicity online, a lot of toxicity, like a lot. But what I also have to appreciate from this election, though there was high voter apathy, that we weren't, as Kaiser would say, we weren't as dusty as previous election when it comes to policies. That guys were actually discussing policies. That you could have a conversation with somebody who is in the other side of the political divide, and you could discuss, and you could talk about the presidential candidate or your governor, your local political candidate, maybe your governor or member of parliament, and you could, because they're not running on tribal lines, because they're not running on tribal agendas, they're just running on policies. You can discuss openly their policies, and I think that it demonstrated a small maturity in Kenyan politics, and somebody who may not see this from who may see it from the colonial narrative, that you might think, oh no, it's the politicians that have behaved. It's not the politicians that have behaved, because it is the masses. It's the masses that have said, we don't we're not into that tribal politics anymore. It's not flying well with us anymore. And so the politicians have to, and have adjusted. They have adjusted, and you know what? Now we're going to be pushing policies. We're going to be saying bottoms up economic policies, or we're going to be giving Baba care, which means universal health care, or unemployment checks, or hustler narratives. So guys have been pushing non-tribal policies, and because of that, it has, although there is still a lot of while, these are baby steps. What we have seen is Kenyans from two different political divides being able to discuss about the politics, and not getting out, not it, and the conversation not boiling down to tribal hate. Although this is a baby steps. It's not complete. Like, there is still tribalism in Kenya. It's not ended. It didn't end in this election, but we can see it diminishing. And so I think this is the type of talk that Professor Wandia Manjoa says that the politicians or the mediocre middle class that was left behind by the colonial masters, they don't like this. And not only that, the colonial masters themselves don't like this. And that's why they had the attempts by this, and we have this is just complete rumor, but there have been cases that the BBI attempts to change the Kenyan constitution to mutilate it, so that we go back to the old school, so that we lack identity, so that we lack aspirations, and we continue to look towards the West. But now, because even now you see Kenyans speak proudly about Kenya, saying we can do elections better than the United States. We can say that proudly, and that bothers them. That bothers them a lot. Right now the case is actually going to the Supreme Court. For those who are following Kenyan politics, the case is actually in the Supreme Court. The election dispute is actually in the Supreme Court of Kenya. I think the pre-trial starts tomorrow. So those who follow Kenyan politics, check out. Yeah, follow. Tomorrow is when there'll be the pre-trial. It will be a 7 day. The case will be for 7 days. It will be a 7 day hearing, meaning that by the end of this week, I think the hearing will be done. Then I think it's an extra 7 days for the judges to deliberate and come up with a judgment, right? So I think in the next 2 weeks, they say September 5th. So I think even that yeah, I think in September 5th, no, September 5th is when the cases end. Then I think after 1 week, we will be having the judgment from the Supreme Court, and we'll see if they upheld the election or they nullify it. But from what we have seen, even the guys who did elections previously, they have said that at least now everything is being in the open. Every part of the election is being scrutinized. Guys are bringing up all the evidence they need. Both sides have brought the evidence they need, even including the IEBC. So we are looking at so what we are seeing is something that was not unique, something that is a milestone in Kenya, actually, not where the election process is being combed. There is a fine combing of the election process. Everybody just to see what happened, what not happened. Everything that happened behind the scenes is being exposed. So this is progress in the democracy of Africa, and all this came from what our sister here is talking about, the fight. And what the Western world are afraid of, really, what the British are afraid of, is that what's happening in Kenya, maybe Uganda can see it and they implement it, or Rwanda, or Congo, and then when it spreads all over Africa, they no longer have control. So it's the same thing that happened with Ethiopia, right? They were doing well as an economy before the war. They were thriving. They were on the upward, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, right? Ethiopia. Then and they were doing it. They were doing it without the help of the West, right? And guess what? And you know what happened? That war happened, and just trying to stop other African, because if they thrive, then other Africans will have to be, the king is naked, other Africans were going to be exposed, like, okay, yeah, we need to do this too. We need to thrive the way Ethiopia is thriving. Otherwise, we look like fools. It's even you see in Uganda, you see in Rwanda and Congo, right? It's different. There's a reason why the whole of Africa is not allowed to thrive, even one country, without the seemingly help of the Western hand. As you can see, even I remember, because it's different when you see your fellow African country thrive, maybe than seeing maybe a Western country thrive, or an African country thriving because of the Western help. It's very different when you see, and that thing is infectious. It become when an African country thrives on its own hand, it becomes infectious. And I see that's why you saw even Congo and Rwanda having this ag- having this fight, not really a fight, but is it a scuffle or what's the word? What's the best? Yeah, let's give it a scuffle. Congo and Rwanda, they're having this scuffle, and guys were asking Congo, were saying that Congo is getting looted by everybody else in the Western world, but why are they having a problem with Rwanda doing it, right? But you see, that's the thing. It hits different when it's from your fellow African. Isn't it? Like that's the influence each Africans have on each other. When it comes from your fellow it just hits different. It's not the same because and this is something that is maintained. This connection we have with each other. This is something that also can be even if maybe Rwanda thrived or Tanzania thrived, starts thriving without the Western help, right? Without apparent Western help, it's just Tanzania or even Burundi, starting to thrive and without Western help, and just you see it hits different to other African countries. It just slaps. It's like a slap. It's like a different type of pain than when a European country or some Asian country, because that's your fellow African. It means that it can be done, and you are the so you will find that there's going to be political pressure. It just comes automatically that all other Africans start to thrive like that. So one also when you if you I feel like the Europeans know this, but I don't know if Africans know this, that it doesn't take a lot. All it takes probably is just one African country to wake up, and that thing and the whole Africa shines bright. It's just like a bushfire. I think the European countries are aware of this. I think the Western world is aware of this. I don't look at the infrastructure that China. Look how they hate China for just building roads in Africa. I'm not saying I'm a fan of China, but what they've done is they've changed their mentality because as much as we are not a big fans of them, but for sure they do some nasty stuff, and they are not to be trusted. But the fact that the amount of infrastructure development they brought to Africa, to the point that Africans can have a city that is up to international standards, where they have roads that without they can travel from home to work without hitting a pothole or without leaving the tarmac. These are it changes mentality, and you can see even now Tanzania is having a huge infrastructure drive. Kenya is already had a huge infrastructure drive. You see even Uganda having that. You see Rwanda. It becomes infectious, and so now guys want the countries to look like, what, we can do it, and that change of mentality, it has really annoyed the West, and you can even see the way they talk about China and Africa. It like right now in Africa, did you know that it's not even the biggest debt in African countries is by the IMF or Western organization. China has only a small percentage of the debt. It's like 10% or something of the debt in Africa. All Africa's debt, I know, is only a small amount is China. The rest is Western. It's IMF, it's either IMF or World Bank or bilateral from Western societies. But they make it look like the red herring. They make it look like China because that small percentage of China, you can see it has changed the mentality of Africa. Our Africans. That small percentage, yes, and that thing now it has made them even more difficult. It has made Africa much more difficult to exploit, even just because of that change, that small change of mentality. So back to the article, enter elections, right? So let's talk about African elections. So if Africans, so you can see the fight in Kenya. Just to give a perspective in Kenya, not even Kenya, the fight in African elections or African democracy. I don't think personally that Europeans and the West, like Americans, they don't want African democracy. In fact, when they see African becoming more democratic, it hurts them. It they and it's not a secret. They've done this before. They start to, you know, plan, come up with plans in which they can regress our democracy. And that's why you've seen in the last 5 years, Professor Wandia Njoya says that in Kenya, the last 5 years has just been a fight for the Kenyan soul. So, and you can even see this in, I don't know, I think even in Ghana, in West Africa, I don't know, I think you can see this too, where there is a fight for African souls. Africans are fighting for their souls, their identity, their African soul. Yeah. Which is this is a philosophical term, really. I think one day, maybe even during this stream, we might show you the the video of what the African soul is described as in philosophy. You know, like look at how even just look how they found this pastor, this rogue pastors that we talked about this in the Hidden Hand a couple of weeks ago. The rogue pastors, they are funded by the Western society because they want these rogue pastors to be our philosophers. These rogue pastors, those are the ones, you know, they want those guys to think for us, you know. And in fact, she she wrote another article that I don't even, I think no, it's Frantz Fanon actually. She was quoting Frantz Fanon how Americans are, or just Western society. Let's just say Americans, they are quite liberal when they are in their societies, but very conservative outside America. They push conservative values outside America, but liberal values inside America. You know, that's something you need to notice because when it comes where the money goes, the money in funding in America, they fund all these rogue pastors that claim all sorts of ridiculous, you know, misleaders of the populations. Those are the people who get a lot of funds from the United States, you know. Also, they also fund a lot of, we talked about the abortion, they also fund a lot of, most, the number one funder of abortion clinics in Africa is, you know, the United States, you know. So it's very interesting perspective. Let's just continue. The function of elections in Kenya is to impose 5 year interrupt. We have talked about this. And by the time Kenyans rebuild their energy and emotions, it almost time for the next elections and the abusive cycle starts again. The emotional and intellectual labor which is harvested by politicians and empire is not immediately visible for the several reasons. For one, the racist narrative that Africans have no brains and that they are simply bodies for exploitations is an enduring legacy that we see from racist education policies to anti-black police violence in Kenya. In Kenya, there is a strong narrative repeated by the Ministry of Education itself that ideas are a luxury for Kenyans. And all we need is food, shelter, medicine in their rudimentary forms. Very interesting perspective. That, you know, Africans, we talk about, you know what, I have been guilty of this too. I've been guilty of this. Thinking, oh, you know what, Africans have no time for ideology. That all Africans need is food, shelter, and clothing, and and in their rudimentary form, not even not even in the economic solution. Basically, they need bags of food, shelter, and you know, and clothing and medicine in their rudiment. You know, not that none of that is farmed here or something. It's something they are brought by in bags, as you can see by the president of Senegal in his awesome dustiness. He went to, in the representation of all of us as Africans, he went to Russia, yeah, and you know, to beg for food from Ukraine that is being invaded and is in war right now. Is now this guy with all his how entitled you need to be, that you go to Ukraine, a war-torn country, and you ask them for food. You know, asking Ukraine, you know, a war-torn country for food. How mediocre, how incompetent can you really be as a as a leader? Just as a leader, like eh, I'm sorry, man. That guy needs to go. I'm just saying that guy should not be representing Africa to me. And I think he's the same guy who added Egypt, yeah, who added Israel as an observer status. You know, and in fact, even until the South African government is like, wait, we were not informed of this decision. So I don't like this guy. I don't know. He needs to go. He needs to go. It's too many strings attached. This is why nobody trusts the AU. AU is just, it requires a huge overhaul. Like, how entitled, going to a war-torn country, asking them to feed Africa. Oh, open the shoe so that they can feed Africa. Open the seas Russia so that Ukraine, which is war-torn, can feed Africa. Oh my God, that thing really annoyed me. By the way, it's like, oh my. Yeah, that leader needs to go. But you see that he's be the leader that is the West will support him. The West, they love that leader. But we continue. Second, capitalist stealth. In fact, oh my God, let me give you this point that we need food, shelter, and medicine. Medicine also. Everybody remembers the pandemic. How Africans could not even could not get the. Is it not the tender? What is it? Is it the copyright? That thing you get for the virus. What is it? The thing you got for, I think it's the copyright. It's not the copyright. It's the patent. The patents to the vaccine. Africans couldn't get it. Then I read today that that thing was being that thing they were the US already had spread waived. They had already waived that patent for the whole of the West. Companies like Pfizer, Moderna, they were all given waivers for that vaccine, but they could not do it for Africa because Africa, because of this first sentence, that Africans are just, all we need is food, shelter, and medicine in their rudimentary forms. We don't need to make it. We don't need to manufacture anything. This is the agenda against African manufacturing. It's the neoliberalism agenda that guys, this idea that people are natural, like everybody has their natural talent. Like, oh, Europeans are just natural manufacturers. You know, it's just so Africans were just natural entertainers. Crazy racist philosophies, crazy racist economics. But we continue. How Africans interpret their experience, express their feelings, and relate to the social and natural environment have been infiltrated, distorted, and battered in ways in which I have not fully come to terms with. Wait, I didn't read the second point. The second point is capitalist stealth has been busy undermining how Black people think and feel through diverse forms of sabotage at the level of language, culture, education, spirituality, and psychology. Get that? These are all arts courses in our African universities that are very much discouraged because of because they don't make money, right? Language, culture, education, spirituality, and psychology. All these are arts. But yeah, guys will say they did. When you see universities, and the IMF is pushing for this in University of Nairobi. I see this in. I don't know. I think I also see this movement in South Africa, where there is a push for these causes to be dropped, like completely not, because they're deemed non-profitable. These are causes that are deemed non-profitable. So there is a push for universities in Africa to drop them completely. But I say people don't go to university. You go to university for knowledge, And if these courses are dropped, guess who's going to be teaching them? that your local misleader pastor, the local rogue pastor is going to is going to be teaching psychology, spirituality, education, culture. He's going to be preaching all that. You've given the local misleader pastor all that power. And who controls that pastor? Where does he get the funding from? Yeah. So, yeah, how Africans interpret their experience, express their feelings, and relate to their social and natural environment have been infiltrated, distorted, battered in ways in which even I have not I have not fully come to terms with. It was only until the exposure of Cambridge Analytica's actions in 2017 elections that I understood the war against emotions and spirituality. Yeah, Cambridge Analytica is it a British company? I think it's a British company that has been very influential in elections all over the world. I think they made Trump elected. They got Trump elected, and they've been infiltrating also election. And they were also hired by the current president of Kenya to win his re-election campaign. And so you can see the type of presidents this guy is like. In fact, there was a huge scandal because there was a leak from Cambridge Analytica themselves about Kenya, and they talked about how elections are purely emotional activities. It's not about logic; it's about emotions. But let's continue. Let me not get ahead of myself. But in 2017 elections, that I understood the war against emotions and spirituality. In the name of European secular enlightenment, the colonial state has created a reservoir for the empire to tap into and manipulate our energy and emotions for their own use. In the Channel 4 expose of, let's see if you can open this link. In the Channel 4 expose of Cambridge Analytica, one official statement provided the Damascus moment for me. After explaining the role of emotions and subconscious, the Cambridge Analytica official proudly explained in their principle in electoral campaigns as follows. Their principle in electoral, they are like exactly they're involved in many elections all over the world, and their principles in their campaigns are: our job is to drop the bucket. That's what they said. Our job is to drop the bucket further down the well than anybody else to understand what are those really deep-seated underlying fears and concerns. There is no good fighting the elections on facts because it's all about emotions. So that's what they do. They go deep. That's why you find a lot of tribal narratives in Africa pushed by these guys, a lot of racist narratives in the US or something pushed by these guys. Their work is to drain people of their emotions. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a link. Let me put the link for you guys for you to check out the expose. It's in Channel 4 News. I think it's an American news company. Okay, okay, okay. There we are. It's on the comment section, guys. For those who wish to check it out in a later time, there is the documentary about Cambridge Analytica. But okay, let's talk about what professor was talking about. After explaining, okay, I think you've already read this, but the cynical exploitation of our emotions make a real Hochschild concept of the emotional labor come alive. Emotional labor is the work we are forced to do on our emotions in order to adjust to institutional demands. Basically, this is a, this was a huge issue in the elections of Kenya, actually. But I think it's all over Africa. It's a very interesting perspective. I'm going to have to read more of this. Emotional labor is the work we are forced to do in our emotions in order to adjust to institutional demands. In Kenya, the demand for this labor has increased exponentially during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. So, I don't know, guys, what do you think an example of emotional labor is? The work we have to do in our emotions to adjust to institutional demands. Let me name one institutional demand. What work do we have to adjust to institutional demands? I'm trying to think of something that is less controversial because everything I can think of is the gender wars. That's one of the things I'm saying is one of the emotional labor. I think is gender wars. I think I don't know if capitalism is an institution. Is it careerism? Careerism. The institution of career, the career institutions. A lot of, in fact, yeah, like I feel like career demands a lot from women in terms of as an institution, right? Like this thing that I don't know. I think probably it's true that a woman has to forego, maybe has to risk, having a family or choosing career, like as if like they're not the same thing. Maybe that's a so she has to do a lot of emotional labor. Another thing I think is we're talking about the concept of abortion. People talk about abortion, right? Like, and we talked about, and we remember when we discussed the mental effects of abortion, that it takes a huge toll. Whatever, it doesn't matter who you are, it takes a toll. But people do it maybe because of economic purposes. People do it. That's the biggest reason, economic purposes. So that's a lot of emotional labor you have to do for what? It's not because you want to do it, but because of the demands of the institution. you know so this is an interesting perspective that Professor Wandia Enjoy is putting out there. Let's see what she continues to say. The demand for this labor has increased exponentially. Like this emotional labor during Uhuru Kenya. Okay, this is the current mediocre president of Kenya, who is living in he's a caretaker president right now because of the beautiful constitution of Kenya. His powers have been limited. We were fed with toxic narratives like tyranny of numbers and to justify ethnic bigotry, violence against opposition strongholds to justify by was justified by clearly organized campaigns on social media. The civil service maintained The civil service manipulated media and distorted the concept of public participation to avoid accountability for their decisions. You see this? These governments, they don't like public participation. They don't like when people talk about politics on the community level. Not even on the community level, they don't like people talking about politics on the social media level. There was this bill actually that was shot down by the courts because Africa is going to grow, whether they like it or not. We're going to have free speech. That you could not speak. There are countries still today you can't speak negatively about the government because they'll come after you. But here in Kenya, because of that, the court said no, freedom of speech is protected. And you can see this wave just passing through. And it's probably not even beginning with us. Probably South Africa were one of the pioneers of this thing. And, we're just passing by. Right? It's like a wave, like one by one, countries are picking up from each other. African countries are picking up from each other. Like I said, it doesn't take a miracle. It just takes one African country. You just take one African country to wake up in a specific sector, and it just spreads like a bushfire, spreads like a pandemic. Like self-awareness spreads like a pandemic. This slumber just takes one person to wake up, and everybody else will be waking up. It doesn't. It doesn't. You don't have when people are asleep. It doesn't need one person to wake up. It doesn't need everybody to wake up simultaneously. It just takes one person to wake up, and he'll wake everybody up. You know. So let's continue. The cynical exploitation of emotions. Yeah, I've talked about this. In Kenya, the demand for this, yeah, we were fed, yeah. The civil service, it is Kenyans. Yeah. Like I said, in the last 3 weeks, it's been extremely toxic. The civil service manipulated media and distorted the concept of public participation to avoid accountability for their decisions. In the midst of this toxicity, it is Kenyans who are supposed to ignore the manipulation of the emotions and ideas and be adults in the room. This is something also I've seen. And even, when you have, and I see, this is actually a very interesting example. Africans, citizens, were the ones who are supposed to be adults in the government behaves like a child, and we are the ones who are tasked to be the adults in the room. You know, it's a very toxic relationship with our governments. That's what I have to say. Like guys, like exactly people like guys, you know, I see this in Kenya sometimes. I even see this all over Africa, where maybe an organizations the government is pushing a negative policy, that will affect the industry. And because this organization does not want to offend the government, they keep quiet, or they try to have a neutral language. It's not even here. It's not even here. Even you can see it in the international geopolitics. You see how America, when they talk about Africa, when the America talks about Africa, even when they make laws about Africa, look at the latest legislation that is it's now in the House of the Senate, right? They're not they the way they talk about Africa and the way Africans talk about America. You can just see the difference of language. You know, America is not mincing their words. It's like they're on a tantrum. But when Africans talk about Africans, we are now supposed to be the adults in the room. We are tasked with being the adults in the room. It's the same relationship these governments have with their people. You can, oh my, you're not supposed to speak. You're supposed to be neutral because their government will become, might act up and might do something that is not legal, or abuse of power. And because of that, you are forced to be the adult in the room. And the government continues to behave like a child. You are the one who's adjust. The government, it is a very toxic relationship we have with our governments. Let's continue. We were fed with toxic narratives. Yeah, seen this. Yeah, we are expected. Look, exactly. We are expected to defy the gaslighting, ethnic manipulation, and downright dumbing down of politicians. Like politicians, not if politician, instead of when we talk about politics and instead of discussing policies, we're like politicians want to dumb down the conversation and put it down to tribes. It's like let's continue. Let's see where was I? Where was I? Yeah. We are expected to defy, the gaslighting and ethnic manipulation. Gaslighting is the other day where gaslighting is when the government called its citizens indisciplined. When the price of President Museveni of Uganda, when the price of maize shot up, he says, "Eat sorghum." you know, a lot of gaslighting. When coronavirus spreads because the healthcare systems are not doing well, the government calls Africans indisciplined. Because it's because you're not disciplined, you're not wearing masks. That's why But no, the healthcare systems are on their knees, hanging by a thread. But you're not going to admit that. You're going to say, no, it's the Kenyans or it's the Africans that are indisciplined. When you exercise your freedom of speech and freedom of association in any political way, or say, no, it's you know the and the government, and because you want the government might punish you, right? You're afraid that the government might punish you. You might afraid that the politicians might misuse you. And what happens is that you are being that's gaslighting. It's gaslighting because that is the dysfunction that is in front of us. That governments can abuse their power because you didn't talk well, or because you didn't say something they liked, or even in Kenya right now, you can see uh, this guy called one of the presidential candidates. His name is Raila Odinga, right? Right now, he's calling for peace, right? I think everybody in the country, all the politicians in the country, they're calling for peace. But there is this tactic I read, and it's from Frantz Fanon, and I read it from his book, The Wretched Earth, in which one can use this tactic to the African politicians, the ones who are wise, the threat of violence, they use the threat of violence. They don't say, they tell everybody peace, peace. They tell their people, hey, have peace, peace. But then when they go to the negotiating table, they say, these guys, I'm holding them back. I'm holding them back. It's these guys are angry. They are ready to blow up. But so they're using the threat of violence in a very interesting way, very manipulative way, that you need to give me the what I want so that I can continue to hold them back. You know, very the pushes the perspective that Africans are just violent savages. But that's according to Frantz Fanon. The book is called The Wretched Earth. For those who want to go and read it further, it talks about this type of manipulation and the threat of violence. How politicians use the threat of violence to push their agendas. The threat of the violence, like they act like as if they come to the people and they behave like freedom fighters. But they behave, then they go to the masters. The masters. you know and they act like they are holding back the violence. They are playing middlemen, the mediocre middle class. The scene that's actually it was a huge trend, and actually Kenya was one of the countries he mentioned that this was something that a tactic that Kenyan politicians use a lot, and you can even see it. In fact, if you follow Kenyan news, uh, where if you follow the Kenyan election, you just look at it tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the hearings, the pre-trial hearings, but the whole week it will be about that case. It will be about the election dispute. It will be heard in court. Everything will be put there. But you can see I've read the affidavits from the submissions of each party. You can see the IEBC, the chairman of the IEBC, he says that this politician came to me and he says that you need to declare this guy president, otherwise the country will be going to violence. And that is not the big, and you need to look at the bigger picture. It's like, say they don't have creativity, no creativity, same tactics from old school, you know. But we continue. Let's not digress too much. The cynic, where was I? It is in Kenya. Where was I? Meanwhile, here we are. Meanwhile, donors, venture capitalists, splash funds that have drowned different African innovations, from politics to gender to technology. The effort of Kenyans to remain humane and create in the effort of Kenyans to remain humane and creative in the midst of all this psychological noise is a form of unnecessary emotional labor. You know? And this is why a lot of Kenyans, and I show you the video when you're talking about my brother Joab from Dar es Salaam. We had a talk, guys were looking about the situation about Kenya, what next? They go to I showed a lot of videos of Kenyans in social media saying then they are tired, they are exhausted. And now she's describing that exhaustion is not it comes from the emotional labor you have to do with all this noise, this mediocrity around us. It's tiring. And despite all this mediocrity around us, we are still expected to be creative. We're still expected to be humane, to not be cruel, to be kind, to be, it's just, it is, I think Africa, yeah, it takes a lot of strength. I think that's why when I look at Africans, I see the amount of strength they have within them, that if it is just a matter of time, just a matter of time. Is the hard work Africans do? It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time. But this world is ours. This world is ours to take. It's ours. We have the ability to take it. It's just a matter of time. Because through all this noise, we still stand. You know, we still tried. We are still creative. We are still, we are still trying to get over the violence. A lot of, a lot of violence has been stopped, although some is still instigated, and and there's a reason why the West wants to continue to makes it. All this emotional labor makes it also easier to instigate violence, and the West they take advantage of that. As you can see with our brothers in Ethiopia. Because a lot of these people who are fighting, they're exhausted emotionally, and they feel like they have to resort to being inhumane. But let me continue. But this is all according to our sister. Where was I? Our sister, our mother, and our elder, Professor Wandi Njoya. And this pressure on Kenyan gains momentum as elections draw near. When desperate politicians whip up emotions and the media narrative becomes so narrow, unfortunately, we have little room to wiggle in, given that our sports, arts, and culture are affected by poor policy. Like when you watch the media, all you see is politicians. You don't see sports. You don't see, there's no sports league that is thriving in Africa. You know, our culture is suppressed because a lot of, so we are stuck with this justice. You know, our arts are looked down upon. It's just, it is not a good state, but we are getting out of it because at least we are seeing arts coming out. We have seen this awareness in our arts, even though the IMF are trying to put down this African Renaissance, or the beginning of this African Renaissance in terms of art. I see a lot of artists blossoming, even in social media. You see a lot of African artists coming out of their shell. The other day I was seeing an African poet, lately, there was a time when you couldn't say, I'm an African poet, like that's your career. Now it's become like, yeah, that's what you should do. That's your career. Embrace it and be poetic. We need to encourage, and always, if you see African culture, encourage it, promote it, so that people have something else to do and watch and to cheer, other than these toxic politicians that we are stuck with here, who, by the way, are going to change because the masses are changing. The people are changing. People are beginning to see. The fact that we are reading this article is just evidence that we are seeing. People are awakened to all these things. Unfortunately, where were we? Where were we? Kenyans are therefore stuck between becoming more emotionally wary or feeding on the adrenaline triggered by the toxic environment. This is also something that's crazy. All the while their social, mental, and financial fortunes decline. Many like I said, this is what you when you feeding on the adrenaline triggered by the toxic environment. Yeah, I see this a lot. I see guys, you know, let's give an example of two teachers, you know, two teachers, government teachers, from two different tribes, you know. Now, it doesn't matter. Let's say, let's just tribe A or tribe B, right? They are two different tribes, and tribe A supports a certain candidate, tribe B supports another. But these are two teachers from tribe A. Whoever wins that election, it doesn't. The teacher, they no, none of those teacher A or teacher B are still going to be the same fate. But the way you will see teacher A and teacher B talk, it's like when the tribe of teacher A, the tribe mate of teacher A, if he becomes president, teacher A is going to have like a better salary or something. You might think that's going to happen, but it's not. This is pure. But the way it's like watching the Premier League. It's watching football, right? It's like they just when your club wins, that's why I don't even watch football anymore because I realized that does even if the team you support wins, what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens to you when your team wins. Nothing happens to you when your team loses. You just feel bad. When your team wins, you feel happy. But that's that. But that's about it. You don't get any other utility from that shit. And that's what's happening with politics in Africa. Tribal politics in Africa. You're not benefiting if your tribe mate wins or loses. It doesn't. Nothing happens. But you are still obsessed and distracted from because you are emotionally weary. You know, or emotionally starved because there is no culture, there is no sports in your country, there is no culture in your country, there is no, so you are starved for that part of your brain that craves this thing. Politicians now have become like your entertainment, so now you are supporting politicians the way you would support a team in a football team or something, instead of voting for policies. As a teacher, you have become tribal, you have become hateful because same dynamics in which somebody supports Manchester United and Chelsea, or Manchester United and Liverpool. They're the rivals. Same that type of rivalry is the same tribal rivalry that is in Africa. Whenever, even if Manchester United wins, you don't gain anything. You don't win. You don't get anything. They don't pay you. They don't do. If they lose, nothing happens. You just feel bad. It's the same thing that happens here because we have been, we have failed to separate that part of ourselves from our politics. I think that part that craves arts and sports and speculation and all those things that are healthy. By the way, because our political systems does not have this right. It separates this from us. We are now put in our state where it's complete tribal speculation, expectation. It's a very interesting dynamic that our sister here says. But let's see what she continues. Unfortunately, what does she say here? Yeah, she says that while you are supporting all these politicians because they are from your tribe, and you celebrate your tribe as one, but that politician is, but what you fail to recognize is that your social, mental, and financial fortunes are still declining. So you're in a very crazy state. The African is in a very precarious state. You know, so many, and it's not just Africans, like the masses. She goes ahead and says that many intellectuals and pioneer voices crack under the pressure and take sides. By the time Kenyans are casting their vote, everyone is tired, wants to the noise to end so that we get on with our lives. Unfortunately, you know, unfortunately, what we go to deposit in the ballot box is more than our vote. At the polling station, we lay our energy at the feet of politicians. We promptly Our politicians have become our gladiators. You know, I'm also beginning to see this type of dynamic happening in the US with Donald Trump. You know, guys supporting Trump. Not even big. It's beyond policies now. It's just it's become the same thing that we are seeing in Africa. It's become like a gladiator sport. You know, like, oh, Trump. When Trump wins, you celebrate, even if your cost of living is going to go up, even if you don't have healthcare, even if you don't, you forget all these things and you become a spectator. You feed into the adrenaline. You're feeding into adrenaline because otherwise, you'll be what? What is it? Otherwise, you'll be exhausted because you will feel like nothing is going to change. You know, you'll be confronted by the feeling that nothing is going to change, and that will exhaust you. So you just choose, win my tribe, let my tribe win, and at least you gain some small happiness. Even that's what they say. In fact, what I'm impressed, you might think that this is just the view of a public intellectuals, but I've seen Kenyans speak like this. Like, because when you say, by there, you know that we all suffer when you say maybe Kenyans celebrating their tribal president as one, and in the end of the day you say, we're all going to suffer. Like, yeah, I know we're going to suffer, all of us. And all Kenyans will tell you, even if they are celebrating, even if they are sad, they all know that they're going to suffer. That is nothing. It has not escaped their awareness. It's not escaped them. But they say, let us celebrate for now. So it has become a gladiator sport. It's become a sport. Politics has become. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to define it. It's just become a sport, which is a very huge degradation. And I don't think politics was supposed to be like that. But let's continue. By the time Kenyans are therefore stuck, the toxic environment, and because it's a sports, how sports become, when it becomes a toxic environment, guys exchanging all manners of insults and dog whistling, and in the end of the day, everyone is tired because now we're like, okay, it's become toxicity also drains your energy. Unfortunately, we go to deposit on the ballot box more than our vote. At the polling stations, we lay our energy at the feet of politicians who promptly channel it into negotiating new power relations with each other. That's what I said. Not even what I said, the Frantz Fanon said, how politicians use the number of votes they like. Look at them, man. I'm holding them back. Look how agitated they are. Look how agitated they are. I'm holding them back. They're about to riot. It's only me who's holding them back. Give me this so that I can calm them down. This is a tactic they used with the white man, and they're still using it against each other here. So when and Kenyan is still in Kenya is getting the Kenyans or the Africans are getting in this constant agitated state where there is even you can see even when people talk about Kenya, the election, people are like, oh my God, there's going to be violence. It's going to be, it's like expected. Why is it expected? Because politicians are putting Kenyans or the system is putting Kenyans in this agitated state, so that they can negotiate. This is the power that Professor Wandianjoa is talking about. This emotional labor that Kenyans are being put in constant agitation, in constant tension, in a toxic environment where where it is easy to ignite violence. That type of state is, it takes a lot of emotional labor, but the politicians are utilizing that to into the negotiations. They use that type of environment. Look at my people, how agitated they are, how ready they are for violence. Politicians are using that to negotiate power deals. Where are we? Once the presidential winner is announced, we go through grieving and catharsis, depending on our choice, and through a deep sense that even if we voted for the side that won, it is unlikely that all the issues that we narrowed down to tick to a tick on a piece of paper will ever be addressed. Yeah, this is it gets a little bit depressing, but she may have a point because at the end of the day, politicians are liars anyway, you know. It is no wonder that our youths see no point in voting. This is referring to the huge voter apathy that's happening all over Africa. I think Pastor Ezra was also saying that even in South Africa, a lot of youths don't vote. In Kenya, it has already been said that a lot of youth are not voting. I don't know the next. I don't know. Angola just had an election. I don't know if youth. I don't know. I would like to see the statistics over there. If there was high voter apathy, Nigeria election is coming, so you're going to see. But a lot of youth, African youth in the continent, are not voting. You know, and it's because of this state. It's like I said, confronted with the helplessness that maybe nothing will change. You know, so they feed off this toxic adrenaline, you know, just for that small happiness. But they are all too aware that their financial gains, their finances are on the decline, and their social, you know, their society and finances are on the decline. They are all too aware of this. What this means is that we Africans must continue to do the work of dealing with the issues that make us emotionally and intellectually vulnerable to the harvest of our energy every 5 years. We need diverse media. That's what we have here in Swahili Nation. A diverse media, you know, a humane education. Let me put the point again here. What Professor Wandia Joy is saying. I don't know if let me see if I can zoom this thing. I don't think for those who can see this. Yeah, I think there we are. Too much. Yeah, here we are. We need diverse media, a diversity in our media, you know, not media that is, she's talking, not media that is just giving maybe one perspective or media that is just showing, yeah, politics. Maybe, you know, sometimes we want to see sports, we want to see our fact, you know, like the acting industry is on its knees in Kenya. You know, we need that type of diversity. In fact, I'm going to give Nigeria a big thumbs up because when it comes to the arts industry, even when we look at Nigeria movies, Nollywood, they're doing well. Like, oh my God, let's not forget Mali and Senegal. These guys have a huge, what is it, acting industry? Not, is it film industry? Film industry. Yeah, they are like, that's important. Like, that's very important. It distracts you from all this. You know, it's just better for life than from all this toxic tribalism. But yeah, you have to give them the thumbs up from that. And I think as East Africans, we need to learn from this. From actually, yeah, East Africans, I think we need to learn a lot from West Africans when it comes to our the arts industries and all that. And basically, a vibrant social life government, outside of government and politicians. We need to get ourselves outside the clinch of government and politicians. More than that, we need to understand the parasitic role in which politicians, bureaucrats, and donors play in undermining our political, societal, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional life, and how they use elections to harvest and drain our political energy every 5 years. Well, guys, this is the end of the topic today. It's from Wandi and Joya, great public intellectual. I think I've already posted the link of everything. So yeah, I think we end the discussion. Oh no. Before that, we have our donation. We have our Harambe in One Africa. We are trying to donate to officers. Those who are not aware, join up and contribute. Is it five? Just a minimum of no. There's no minimum. You can even contribute €1, but the aim is €5 for 25,000 people, so that guys can have an office. I think guys who are new, let me post the link for you. But I'm sure you guys already know what's happening. It's been around the campaign, so if you feel like end the week with a generous contribution, God will bless. But either way, God will bless you, man. May God bless you either way. And if you don't have, that's okay. You can always like, share, subscribe, and push the channel. It doesn't, everybody contributes to the movement in their own way and capabilities. But yeah, we are having an office. Let me show you the link. Let me just show you the page where we will be talking about all these things, and we will be having way better studio quality and meeting all these guys who are liberating us from the. Oh, thank you, Maria Antoinette, for showing us. Yeah. Here it is. Let me check out your comments. Welcome. I forgot to welcome you guys. Welcome, Maria Antoinette. Welcome, Neom Fax. Welcome, Wallace Kananda. Welcome, Regmon Music. Welcome. Welcome, Lisha Rebel. Welcome everybody. So check out your comments here. Emotional harvesting is in everything African related is to the Western system. Our relationship with them is basically them feeding on our energy. Yeah, that's true. Albert Einstein is quoted having said, "The significant problems we face today cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were when we created them." So it's a great quote. Yeah, thank you, Lisha. Transformation begins inside out, then from the citizenry up to the leadership. No revolution ever began at the top. My brother Wallace, one of our major challenges is that we are expert analysts and problem definers. But when we are unable to discern solutions, when are we able to discern solutions? We do not implement. Martin Luther King, Today we have powerful quotes. Martin Luther King Jr. said that we suffer from a high blood pressure of words, but an anemia of action. Aye. Eh, I'm Kenyan. Our current constitution is fully empowers the citizenry to participate and speak into their governments by majority. Most citizens don't even bother. May I say, it's high time we stop blaming white people for our present. Sure, they ruined our past, but the present is in our hands. That's a fact that the least tribal driven election in our history. What is sad is that the final process of the tally and gave a clear, yeah, yeah, man. On point, there's a silver lining in the current mess. We are reinforcing our democracy. We are making lemonade. Yeah, my brother Wallace, man, you've got some great insights. No time to thrive isn't an entirely accurate perspective. Duped to empower and enrich others is more accurate. The Commonwealth keeps the UK. Yeah, I don't even understand why we are in the Commonwealth. Like this thing should have been. I don't know. That thing should have been disbanded soon as guys got independence. Yes, pain inflicted by fellow Africans is more traumatic. Beware, China. Our leaders enter into every bad deals for the infrastructure development. They're, yeah, not to mention our leaders are ready to take, yeah, integrity, character, identity are all intertwined. Interesting point. Thank you, Lisha Rebel. I've never had the writer of the article might need to point the source of that statement. The Ministry of Education policy. Nah, nah, I think she was referring to the policies of the bit that she was just I think giving the general theme in the policies of the Ministry of Education. I think we're talking about when she how Kenyans cannot think. Like when you see them the way they talk about Kenyans, that is the dog whistling they are implying. You know, in our conversations, we give too much power to the West as though we are helpless to transform ourselves. Yeah, man, the West is not immune to stupidity, my brother. But emotional labor sounds like something the author is trying to invent, which is why, yeah, obviously. But all these words they had to all words are invented somewhere. So and she's like a professor. So yeah, we should also celebrate our intellectuals because we will quote will like my brother you've quoted guys. You know what you've quoted Albert Einstein, you've quoted Martin Luther King. That's also one day you will be quoting her about emotional labor. We should be also that's what I'm talking about. We need to have more of our people to quote. We need more of our philosophers to quote you know, to give us our own type of philosophies instead of talking about Karl Marx, talking about, capitalism, Karl Marx, all neoliberalism. We need more of our own thinkers to look at our own specific problems because our problems, I realize that when we import dual systems like liberal versus conservative, in Kenya, where they don't even apply to our problems, but we see here, but even when the media talks, we're trying to import that two, two fight system where liberal, conservative, socialism versus capitalism. I don't know. I don't even think they strike on the real issues of Kenyans. That's my point, But we need people to think. Yeah. it's a very interesting point. When the accident happened involving public service vehicle, a bus, most Kenyans ask, where were the traffic police? They don't ask, why did Kenyans overload the bus? Yeah, citizenry demanding to be controlled. Okay, welcome Gracemond. Welcome Rigmond Music. Let us engineer a system that will make sure all is well, everyone is satisfied, and our land rate at which we consume and produce is balanced. Let us come together and build an altar for Jehovah and call it our new government. Amen. Yeah, man. It's time for us to change. This is the time for change, the beginning of the end of civilization. Britain wants to revive empire. America is on some crazy new world order agenda. We have a chance because we are the frame of the reference now of what human normal is. Interesting. Today, guys, thank you guys, man. You have such great contributions. They have actually given me food for thought for next time. Let us use this chance. Let's use this chance to change the world. Each one of us, turn from following to lead, wherever you are. Yeah, guys. Thank you, guys. In the end of the day, nobody will resist the change. Thank you, guys, for this great conversation, guys. Thank you, guys, for your contribution. Thank you, guys, for enlightening people in the comment section. I'm actually learning new things in the comment section. Thank you for your great quotes. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Neom Fax. Thank you, Marie Antoinette, my brother Wallace Kananda, Regmon Music, and Lilsha Rebel. Thank you guys for coming. Yeah, I'll call it a night today. Start modifying a system which is failing. Let us up the altar in the middle of the city. Let us set up the altar in the middle of a city where everyone will have some kind of power to rule whenever there is a reason. This is interesting. It sounds a little bit okay. These are just new ideas. These are new ideas. Let's push these ideas, guys, and also write. When you like this, my brother Neompa, write about this stuff. Right? You never know. Maybe one day your work will be quoted somewhere or will be taken. Right? If you have good ideas, write them down and publish them. Maybe put them in your website, blog, or some. Just write. Just write. Like this stuff. Don't let this stuff just die in the comment section. All these great things you've written. Don't let them die in the comment section. Write. Publish that stuff, bro. One day, even send the link so that we can also read it here, and everybody, gets a new perspective of new ideas. In fact, that's a very good thing we need to do. But in the end of the day, as we close, let me play this video. Thank you guys for coming. Let me give a prayer to those, because it's a Sunday, guys. We have to end the week in a beautiful prayer, and thank God for everything for this week and pray for the next week, right? So yeah, thank you, Heavenly Father, spiritual Father. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Asante sana kwa kutuleta hapa. Thank you for this beautiful week. Bless everybody who has contributed. Bless the whole One Africa family. And bless us with good health and good living. In your holy name we pray and believe in. Amen. So thank you guys. See you guys next time. See you guys tomorrow. Mika is coming to a very great show.
So the lie began from the very beginning of time, right? And I can ask you one question right now. What does history tell us about Africa? Who discovered Africa? If you write right now on Google who discovered Africa, you find out that is one white man that he came and discovered Africa. And you can ask yourself that how can you discover a place that already exists? How can you discover a place that people already live in that place? It is impossible, but that's what the history tells us. That's what people believe about Africa, that it was discovered by a white man. This guy, he came, and then he went back, he gave a report, and then the next we know is colonialism, because those guys, they sat somewhere to divide Africa like a piece of cake, because they discovered it, they own it, it belonged to them. But that is us. We discovered, we're the first people to know. And today you have a lot of people around the world that they think that Africa was discovered by them.